Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from the 6th group and we're going to explain about language and culture in social linguistics. Language and culture go hand in hand, whether it is folklore of a certain nation or simple day-to-day talk. Logically, there is a certain kind of relationship between language and culture. After all, both of these often define a person, their views, their habits, traditions, and pretty much almost everything about their daily life. For example, in many European cultures, a good day is a sunny day, while in many African cultures, a good day is a rainy day. Different culturally shared values provide the context of interpreting the term for good. These are some explanation about why language and culture has some kind of relation.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, I'm Saparianti Sulastri, and now I'm going to explain about the Worfian hypothesis and Kinship system. But first, let's go into Worfian hypothesis. Worfian hypothesis. This idea was further developed largely on the basis of work with American Indian language by Sapir students Benjamin Lee Worf, and now often known as Worfian hypothesis. Worf's initial arguments focus on the striking difference between English and Native American ways of saying the same thing. From such linguistic, Worf inferred underlying difference in habit of talks and tried to show how these talk patterns are reflected on non-linguistic cultural behavior. Worf claimed in his popular writings that language determines talk. His best known example involves treatment of time in Hopi. Worf claimed that Hopi was better suited for Pidgin than SAE or Standard Average European language, saying that Hopi centered on events and process, English on things and relation. That's it. Hopi grammar emphasizes aspect, how an action is performed, and over tense, when an action is performed. And what did Benjamin Lee Worf say?
I find it gratuitous to assume that a Hopi who knows only the Hopi language and the cultural ideas of his own society has the same notions, often supposed to be intuitions, of time and space as we have, and that are generally assumed to be universal. In particular, he has no notion or intuition of time as a smoothing flowing continuum, in which everything in the universe proceeds at an equal rate out of a future into a present and into a past. After long and careful analysis, the Hopi language is seen to contain no words, grammatical forms, constructions, or expressions that refer directly to what we call time or the past, present, or future.
Worf argues that in Hopi, units of time are not represented by nouns, but by adverbs and verbs. Worf argues that all Hopi nouns include a notion of a boundary or outline, that consequently the Hopi language do not refer to the abstract concept with nouns. This Worf argues is encoded in Hopi grammar, which doesn't allow duration of time to be counted in the same way the objects are. So instead of saying, for example, 3 days, Hopi will say the equivalent of on the third day by using ordinal numbers. Worf argues that Hopi do not consider the process of time passing to produce another new day, but merely bring back as the day-like aspect of the work. Next, we are going to Kinship system. kinship system. One interesting way in which people use language in daily living is to refer to various kinds of kin. It is not surprising, therefore, that there is a considerable literature on kinship terminology, describing how people in various parts of the world refer to relatives by blood and marriage. Kinship systems are a universal feature of language because kinship is so important in social organization. Some systems are much richer than others, but all make use of such factors as genders, age, generations, blood, and marriage in their organization. For example, that person's father or mother's brother or mother's sister's husband in an attempt to show how individuals employ various terms, but without trying to specify anything concerning the semantic composition of those terms. In English, both your father's father or mother's father are called grandfather. But that term includes another term, is father. You will find too in English, your brother's wife's father cannot be referred to directly, but your brother's wife's father or sister's-in-law's father is a circumlocution rather than the kind of terms that is of interest in kinship terminology. You may also be unable to account for the many instances you may find of terms which are very obviously kinship terms but are used with people who are obviously not kin by any of criteria usually employed. For example, English uncle is used to designate father's brother, mother's brother, father's sister's husband, mother's sister's husband, and also non-kin relationships. As when children sometimes talk to use it for close friends of their parents. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. And next sections will be explained by my friends. Bye-bye.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I'm Aniq. How are you all? Hopefully you're always healthy, good luck, and keep up the spirit. Okay, today I will explain the material sociolinguistics about language and culture, especially for taxonomies and color terminology. The first of all, I will explain about taxonomies, and the second, I will explain about color terminology. Okay, let's continue to explain about taxonomies. What is taxonomies? Taxonomies is how people use language to classify and categorize various aspects of the world in which they live. But they do not always classify things the way scientists do. They often develop systems which we call folk taxonomies rather than scientific classification. A folk taxonomy is a way of classifying a certain part of reality so that it makes some kind of sense to those who have to deal with it. Typically, such taxonomies involve matters like naturally occurring flora and fauna in the environment, but they may also involve other matters too. Diagnosis of particular condition may evoke considerable debate. What is an innovation normally, holistic diagnostic applies from variety of people. So, and the next we continue by discussing about color terminology. Color terminology is the terms that used by people to describe color. Different cultures have different terms for colors, and may also assign some color terms to slightly different parts of the human color spectrum. For example, English brown, French burgundy, and Indonesia chocolate. That means every place around the world has its own term for describing colors. The categorization of color, according to Ross, three main parts of color terminology, such as anthropologists, universalists, and relativists. Abstract color. Abstract color words are words that only refer to a color. In English, white, black, red, yellow, green, blue, brown, and gray are definitely abstract color words. But colors like maroon and magenta are also abstract, though they may not be considered basic color terms, either because they are considered by native speakers to be too rare, too specific, or to be subordinate used to higher basic color terms. In this case, red or maybe purple. Descriptive color. Descriptive color is words that are secondarily used to describe a color, but primarily used to refer to an object or phenomenon that has the color. For instance, when we say about rose, it is essential with red, although not all of the kinds of rose are red. Purple is another example of this, as it was originally a word that referred to a dye. The basic color of color terminology according to Berlin and Kay. Language makes use of basic color terms. A basic color term must be single word, blue or yellow, not some combination of words, like blue or pale yellow. Not must it be opposition, subdivision, or some higher order term as but crimson and scarlet are of red. Berlin and Kay say, if a language has only two terms, therefore equivalence to black and white, or dark or light. If a third is 8, it's red. So they become black, white, and red. The fourth and fifth terms will be yellow and green, but the order may be reversed. So they become black, white, red, yellow, and green. The sixth and seventh terms are blue and brown. So they become black, white, red, yellow, green, blue, and brown. Finally, as in English, come terms like gray, pink, orange, purple, but not in any particular order. So they become black, white, red, yellow, green, blue, brown, gray, pink, orange, and purple. Color spectrum. The color spectrum is physical continuum, showing not bricks at all. Yet we parcel it out in bits and pieces and assign names to the various components. Parts green, blue, yellow, red. For example, show that the people at Tukatsumaga village have their own language to express about color. They say gadang, blue, pelung, ungu, but in the other place the color words about unaffectable and say blue with volume and gadang for say green. The relationship between language and culture in the color terminology. An attempt has been made to relate the extent of the color terminology in specific language with the level of cultural and technical completeness of those societies in which this language are spoken. For example, the people in Sepak village only know and use the terms of colors: Salem, black; Barak, red; Putih, white; Pelung, blue; Kuning, yellow. But the people in Singaraja know the terms of colors like Salem, black; Barak, red; Putih, white; Hijau, green; pink, Kuning, yellow; Ungu, merah, maroon. Color terminology for race. In some societies and among some anthropologists, color terminology was used to label race, sometimes in addition to a non-color term for the same race. For the example, one of the earlier use of the concept of black as a metaphor for race was first used at the end of the 17th century when a French doctor named Francis Bernier, an early proponent of scientific racism, divided up humanity based on the facial appearance and body type. Well, that's it from me. Hope you guys understand the explanation and thanks for your attention. Okay, will be continued by my friend. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. My name is Syarif and now I'm going to explain about the prototype theory first and then going to taboo and euphemism. So first, what is the definition of the prototype theory? Prototype theory is a mode of graded categorization in cognitive science. where some members of a category are more central than the others. For example, when you are asked to give an example of furniture concept, chair is more frequently cited than, say, a computer desk. As formulated in the 1970s by Ellen Roche and others, prototype theory was a radical departure from traditional necessary and sufficient condition as in Aristotelian logic, which led to set theoretic approaches of extensional or intentional semantics. Thus, instead of a definition-based model, for example, a bird may be defined as elements with features such as feathers, beak, and ability to fly, while prototype theory would consider a category like bird as consisting of different elements which have unequal status. For example, robin is more prototypical of a bird than, say, a penguin because of the categorization before is ability to fly. And now I'm going to explain about the difference between prototype-based concept and feature-based concept. Hudson in the 1996 believes that prototype theory has much to offer sociolinguistics. He believes it leads to an easier account of how people learn to use language, particularly linguistic. And from the kinds of instances he come across, Hudson says that a prototype-based concept can be learned on the basis of a very small number of instances, perhaps a single one, and without any kind of formal definition, whereas a feature-based concept would be harder to learn because of the larger number of cases, plus the number of non-cases would be needed before the learner could work out which features were necessary and which features were not. And now I'm going to explain about the relationship between language and culture and prototypes. According to Hudson, prototype theory may even be applied to the social situation in which speech occurs. He suggests that when we hear a new linguistic item, we associate with it that typically seems to use it and what, apparently, is the typical location of its use. Again, we need very few instances, even possibly just a single one to be able to do this. Of course, if the particular instance is atypical and we fail to recognize this tag, we could be in some discomfort at the later time when we treat it as typical. Prototype theory offers us a possible way of looking not only at how concepts may be formed at the cognitive dimensions of linguistic behavior, but also at how we achieve our social competence in the use of language. We judge circumstance as being typically this or typically that, and we place people in the same way. We then tailor our language to fit, making it appropriate to the situations and the participants as we feel this. So now we are going to talk about taboo and euphemism. First, I will explain about taboo. What is the definition of taboo? In 2002, Ronald Werthoff said that taboo is the prohibition or avoidance in any society of behavior beliefs to be harmful to its member, in that it would cause them anxiety, embarrassment, or shame. While in the 1980, Hetherington gave an ideal description about taboo as, generally speaking, you may say that whatever the society fears will be labeled as taboo. Thus, any kind of action that is frightening, not merely those literally forbidden, comes to be regarded as taboo. For example, death is not forbidden, but it is frightening enough that talking about that may not be allowed. When the act is fearsome, it is very common for the name of that act to become equally fearsome and therefore forbidden. So now we are going to talk about the categorization of taboo. We can define taboo as two types. The first is taboo of fear and the second is taboo of delicacy. The first is taboo of fear. This kind of taboo is referred to the supernatural things, including God, devil, and names of certain animals. The first topic that might be taboo is religion. People often don't say much about something that related to the deities, God, devils, and others which have relation to the religion because they are not allowed to do that. Euphemism for deities as well for religion practices and artifacts have been recorded since the earliest writings. Protection of the sacred names, rituals, and concepts from the uninitiated has always given rise to euphemism. whether it is for exclusion of outsiders or the retention of power among the select. And the next category of taboo is taboo of delicacy. People also try to avoid direct reference of topic they find unpleasant. There are some subjects that are included into the taboo of delicacy, such as death and war. The first is death. According to Boltman, there exists a thing on the earth, unavoidable and unconquerable by any means against our will, named death. Thus, people won't like to mention anything serious, grave, and unhappy such as death if possible. And the next is war. It seems that even the word war itself is unpleasant. People have to come with another different expressions to avoid actually saying that word. And now I'm going to explain about euphemism. What is the definition of euphemism? In 2002, Ronald Werthoff said that euphemism words allow us to talk about unpleasant things and disguise or neutralize the unpleasantness. For example, the subject of sickness, death, dying, unemployment, and criminality. Now I'm going to explain about the relationship between taboo and euphemism. Why euphemism are created and used? A meaning can be defined as the sum of our responses to a word or an object. Words themselves may be seen as responses to stimulation. When unpleasant elements of response attach themselves strongly to the word they use, they tend to substitute another word which is free from these negative associations. In other words, there is a relationship between taboo and euphemism. As we explained before, there are many subjects of taboo, so in some places, the euphemism should be applied in all of the taboo subjects.